Dr. Kimberly Parker currently teaches English at the Cambridge Rindge and Latin School in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We at Beacon Press are so grateful to have her as the editor for A Time to Break Silence and as a member of our Teacher Advisory Board, Dr. Kimberly Parker.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to be here. I just wanted to say a couple of things about this text. And I think the biggest one is that this is a joyful day because we are here to celebrate the publication of a text that can help us make our classrooms transformative spaces. And I know that that sounds probably really broad, but when we have text that can show us the way and lends ourselves to that expertise, then we have sort of a wonderful opportunity. I start every classroom year with a TED Talk given by Chimamanda Adichie. And it's called The Danger of a Single Story. Raise your hand if you know it. Yes. Okay. Right, and essentially in that TED Talk, Adichie says that the problem is that we tend to believe the same stereotype or the same story. And so what happens is that we just continue to tell the same story, the same story, the same story. And it's problematic because, as we all know, there are other stories. And as Achebe says, we need a balance of stories. And I bring that up because, I don't know about you, but we've been hearing a lot of single stories about the Common Core. Right? I'm just gonna let me just boil them down. So the single stories that I've been hearing are that we don't really know what we're doing, teachers don't know what we're doing, we just need other people to tell us. We're just gonna take the curriculum that they give us, we don't know our students, everything is found in the text, connections don't really matter. And I think that that is crazy, first of all. Yes, that's true. And also, what is really problematic is that not enough people are considering the expertise of teachers, right? Everyone in here is an expert. The fact that you have filled out your sub-plans, that you have and let me tell you, that is a nightmare. It's sort of like, are they going to do this when they come back on Monday? What should I expect? So the fact that you have done your sub-plans, that you have shown up here, probably many of you paying your own way, indicates your love for the profession, for wanting to be a better teacher, for caring about your students. But that is not necessarily the stories that are told, right? And so, it's really interesting. I bring this up because Random House and Beacon Press are offering a different story. From the moment this project started, they have involved teachers. Oh, and that's another single story, right? And I don't know about you, but I get 10,000 emails, not really an exaggeration, every day about someone trying to sell me some curriculum. Right? Buy this, Common Core Alliance. Buy this, Common Core Approved. They don't know, there are no teachers involved, they just want to make a lot of money. Okay. However, and this is where the balance of stories comes into play. Because from the beginning, Beacon Press has involved teachers. Right? They got a group of teachers together from different contexts, private, public, urban, suburban, brought them together, talked about the texts that mattered to them, talked about why. Sometimes in those meetings, I felt like it was a high-level seminar, doing all of those discussion analytical skills about what texts are best for kids. And, you know, sometimes people will have advisory boards and they'll say, yes, yes, that's nice, and then they pick their own stuff. But every step of the way, Beacon Press and Random House have honored the work and the advice of teachers. And I think that is very, very important given our current climate. And that's, again, another reason why we need to celebrate the fact that we have a different story in front of us. And that is why I am so happy, one, that you are here, and two, that we can talk about how to make this text useful for you. Okay, so there are a couple of resources. Sure, let's talk about resources. Yeah. A couple of resources that accompany this text. So in it, it's divided into sections and reflection questions follow every section. But there are a plethora of multimedia resources available for you. The first one is the Martin Luther King Jr. Research Institute. And on this, they have timelines, which I think is really useful, right? For kids, things just happen. And for them, for the kids I teach, what happens today matters most. History is the past, and that's it. But when you sort of give them this chronology, which is available here, and also incorporate pictures, also available here, and they have an extensive set of lesson plans, that helps you then to help them think differently. And I will sort of stop here to give you just a little bit of my history. Okay, so I grew up in Kentucky, rural, poor, and every February, my grandmother would sit us down. It would be eyes on the prize time. We couldn't move. Even if we've seen it the last year and the year before, we were going to watch Eyes on the Prize. So I thought really that I knew Martin Luther King. Right? I knew I had a dream. We read it in school, we had to recite it, we had to memorize it, and then later I learned, I thought I knew a letter from the Birmingham jail. And so when we started to do the work about putting the anthology together, I went, oh, there's so much more. Right? Who is this man? And I think that's very similar to how our students respond. Right? They have all, their understanding, if you ask them if they have that understanding, is of 2 Martin Luther King Jr. pieces. I mean, I can't say 2, but I know for sure they know that 1. But then that's it. They think it happened back in the past. Usually they might throw in slavery times because they don't know. And then you are perplexed because you say, do I sort of correct this misunderstanding or do we do what we have to do more? Right? It's just like, what do you do? But that's why you need the other resources. And that's why you can draw on, first, this from the King Institute, and then next, what's our next one? Oh, Freedom Resource. I love this resource. In fact, I just found it the other day. Well, they sent, yes. This is why it's great. You can look at his I Have a Dream speech, and you can listen to it, but there are parts that show you where he has strike-throughs, where he revised, where he did all, like, who knew, right? Kids think you just write one draft and you're done. But when you can say, look, even famous people revise, and show them, that is a powerful piece, right? So you can say, when I saw, I was mesmerized, because you can see the actual work. And I think that's what happens, is that we sort of put these people on pedestals, and kids forget, right? Real people go through the process for writing just like we do, just like I'm going to ask you to do, right? And so when they see that, real-life examples, it helps them to make that process a little bit clearer. And then you have this curriculum guide in front of you, which is, I think it's beautiful. It has, the art in it is fantastic. Ways to think about the text are fantastic. Also, it has supplemental text in it that are useful for students. And all of these are here for you to use, so that you should not feel like, I don't know what to do with this text. I have this book that Random House and Beacon Press gave me at the luncheon. What am I going to do on Monday? Again, because they care so much about an experience for teachers and students that's meaningful, that matters, and that is lasting, they have given you a bunch of resources that, again, are teacher tested and approved. And for one of that, I'm going to talk, I think next, about what that means in a classroom. Okay, on your tables, also, you have a concept map. And I tend to think in bubbles, right? I'll map something out, I'll make some circles, and then start drawing arrows about how they connect. And what is really interesting is that once I started to do this by hand, it was really onerous, and I said, surely there is an online application for this. And there is. It's called Mashable. And it's free, Mashable. But what I did was I sort of thought about, one, in this time of no resources, really, how do you get one text that's going to make your classroom experience meaningful, right? I know that I usually have to make a really strong rationale to my department head about why we need to adopt a text. And so I don't take text adoption lightly, right? I just know that when I ask for a class set of something, I better be able to use that class set for, 15 years or something, which is not so crazy, but that's the reality of many people in schools, is you have one shot really to get it right. And so when I'm looking for a text, I want a workhorse text, right? I want something that offers multiple ways to use it. And so once I had been working with this text for a good long amount of time, I thought about, one, how can this text be used in multiple ways? And that has given birth to this concept map, which again is evolving every day. But some of the things I'll just highlight, sort of on the outside, all of the things that you can do with the text. Always close reading, text-dependent questions, all of those common core skills that they tell us that kids really need. What is really important though also is that with this text you get a really strong sense of King's regard for young people, right? It's a different story. Lots of times I think kids think that it was an old people's movement, right? Civil rights, etc., freedom struggles were not about young people. But in this collection, you get a lot of text about what it means and how King felt about why and how young people could change the world. And I think that is so important for kids, right? If you just act, right, and you can take advantage of these principles and things, you could change the world. And I think for many of the kids I know, they need to hear that. And they need to know that, look, someone is writing for you, and you better do something about it. So then also it helps them to have a broader understanding of MLK, also helps them to think about argument, right? I don't know about you, but I do a lot about argument, right? What's going on, how does this author make a strong argument, what is the evidence, what is the analysis? How does a person make his or her case for what they want? And in this case, how does King do it? There are lots of ways to write your way in and out of this text. There are reflection questions at the end of every anthology, at the end of every selection that can be used as quick formative assessments if you want to use that. But also to get kids to think about the text, right? Just write for a minute and then let's talk about it. So that's at the end of every selection, gives you about 4 questions to get you started. And what I'm going to pause to think about right now, you'll see, thank you for this, the intertextuality. Right? This is where I want to talk about for a while. My students struggle with thinking beyond one text. For them, one text is a text and that's it. And so what I really try to get them to think about is that all text exists really in relation to another text. The world is really full of text and space. And if you are a sophisticated enough reader, you can put those texts in a conversation with each other, right? But they don't, that sounds like so vague to them. So I wanted to really get them to think about what that looks like. And so I've been working with one of the pieces in the anthology, which I actually think is my favorite piece now. And it's called What is Your Life's Blueprint? I'll give you a minute if you want to find that. It's just fantastic. So I'll just give you a little bit of a quote. It's on the board. In your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. However young you are, you have a responsibility to seek to make your nation a better nation in which to live. Now what is really great about this is that King gave this speech to middle schoolers, right? Yeah. So when I tell kids, and I've used this with kids, I tell them, first of all, they can't believe it. Right? He's writing for young people. But then what resonates with them is this idea of somebodyness. Right? Even if you're down and out, you always have to believe in yourself. And again, we talk about this issue of relevance. Kids think this all happened in the past, why does it matter, why should I care? But everyone wants to feel like they count, right? Everyone wants to have that deep, abiding sense of somebodyness. So, we do a lot of work with analyzing main argument, details, all of that stuff, with this essay, right? So by the time they're over, by the time they've done reading it, they're done reading it a couple of times. They know the author's purpose, they know they're able to identify its arguments, to back that up with evidence, and they're also able to do, I do a little précis writing with them because they need to be able to write a very concise summary. So that's the next step. Once they get pretty good with that, then we think about how can we look at other people's blueprints, right? And then also, what do you do when your blueprint is challenged or compromised? So we look at it as an idea, a bigger essential question way. And what that means then is that that's the great invitation for intertextuality. Because after that, then we look at that idea of challenge. So we track an author, track a columnist, We read the work of Charles Blow from the New York Times, who writes a lot about people in challenging situations. And that's all nonfiction text, right? Kids need more work with literary nonfiction. This anthology is amazingly accessible to kids, as is Charles Blow, Then I give them a little bit more complexity, and we read the work of Ta-Nehisi Coates from The Atlantic, thinking about what does it mean and how do people struggle, and then how do people then make a way once their blueprint is compromised. Do they give up? What do you see? What patterns? So we're tracking patterns, and then we're also coming back to that core text of blueprint. What do you see here that either resonates with King's work or is different? And what do you make of that difference? We do a little bit of work with poetry. In terms of thinking about blueprint, Gwendolyn Brooks is great, as is the work of Natasha Trethewey, who all think about, again, identity, development, challenging situations, and also now I want them to think about resilience, right? Because the kids I teach, some of them come from troubling or difficult lives, and I think that they need stories that are different. So they need ways, they need text to be able to make it through. And then we do some art, and then we also do a song by Nas, I Know I Can be what I want to be, yes. Right? But all of these texts are around the same theme. Right? What happens, what is the blueprint of the person in the text? What might they do when that blueprint is compromised? What does it mean for you? And so we write a lot, short writing, longer writing, different forms of writing, just to get them into the habit of thinking broadly across text, because that's the practice that they need. Low stakes practice too. Everything does not have to be high stakes, nor does everything need to be graded. It's fine. But that's okay, right? It gives them the practice that they need, because the culminating assignment for this is that then they have to go back and write their own blueprint, right? What is your own blueprint? And you have to draw on the work that you have done. Right? So it's not just an essay that you write in isolation, but now look at all this stuff you know, and how are you going to put this into an essay? And I think I've been playing with how they can publish that, or how they can make that what they want to do with it. They want to write an essay, they want to do photographs, it's fine. It's fine. This summer when I used it with kids who were in a summer reading program, many of them came back to this concept of somebodyness, right? What does it mean to be who I am? What does it mean to be a young person living in an urban environment when people say I cannot make it, right? What is my blueprint? I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to be the first one in my family, etc. Right? So it resonates with them in ways that I don't think I wasn't quite sure until it happened. And again, I think if I were just to run some sort of analysis about what was it that consistently came up, it's this idea of somebodyness and about wanting to be known. And I think that when a text can open that door, that is a powerful text. And for me, that was enough really to convince me. It was like, if one text can do this, okay, I'm going to take a leap of faith. And I think what has been really great is that I've been able to explore the text with kids. I've been able to then have them do some other reading to say, you know, there's more to history or this person or etc. than you might know. And again, it does all the work that I need it to do, which is sort of fantastic. So what this text also does in terms of the concept map was that it allows me to create a text set, right? So I have a core text with one of those text selections, and then by using an essential question, I can layer text on top of it in ways that I think without it makes it much harder for me to think about, oh, what's my core text? What are we going to do with it? But then we have this idea about identity, for example. One of the things I also did with students was I had them write their own narratives of resilience. So write about a time when something got really hard for you and you kept going. Because, I don't know, my kids are quitters sometimes. They are just really, nope, it's hard, I quit. So I started the year with the resilience narratives as well as this text. And so I say, oh no, but you wrote about this time when it got hard and you did it anyway. So don't tell me you're not going to write this paper. And then sometimes they write it, sometimes. But you know, like I think the more that, because kids have their own stories, their own single stories that they tell, and that they believe, deeply believe. We have our own stories. But if we can help them to then interrogate those learnings and to tell new stories, then I think that's where the real transformative learning happens. And when you can layer that with social justice, with understandings of race and racism and power and privilege and what it means to be a young person 50 years ago and today, then that, again, that's sort of the sweet spot of instruction. That's the relevance, that's why it matters. And again, that's why this text is so powerful and moving. And I think just a special, special text. So just to summarize, the text engaged students through this ability to do intertextual understanding around important ideas. So it's not just a standalone idea of social justice or identity, but look at all these different ways that it has happened. They get to know MLK beyond the surface, which again, I think is really important for kids and their understandings of history and of people, and that people are real. And I draw that back to that resource of being able to look at that draft multiple times of that speech to say, look, I just always struggle with my kids because they think that no one revises. No one revises. But, so I'll take any example I can get to help them on that one. This is high-level, complex, literary nonfiction. Again, what everyone demands, but I think what is really important is that, yes, the Common Core is demanding that, but I think as teachers and educators who have selected this work, it's complex literary nonfiction that is worthwhile. Right? It's not just read this, but it's text that matters for kids. And then as the last point, relevance, relevance, relevance. The speeches that he gave years ago still matter today. And to me, that means that it's a text worth having. And it's a text that I have, and it's a text that I will use, probably that's my workhorse text. And one that I feel pretty confident about making the rationale to my department head that we need. And then going over to the history department and convincing them that they need it too, so that maybe we could split the budget. So just some final wonderful resources that Beacon Press has made available to you. Teaching resources at the King Legacy website, the Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute. I think these are all on your handouts. Beacon Press, and then desk and examination copies from Random House. I don't know if you know about the wonderful ability to get examination copies, but if you just ask them, many publishers will give them to you. So please take advantage. I'll pause right there, just so that we can answer any questions that you might have, any further ideas, conversation you might have. But thank you so much for being here.